Hello and welcome, Tony Stark Policci. I just learned that. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Outstanding. How are you, Sabina?
I'm even better now that you're here because I know we are going to have a fantastic conversation. And there's so many things I wanted to ask you, but for our listeners, who is Tony? What are you currently doing?
Well, what I'm currently doing is creating marketing messaging for clients, helping them with positioning and creating content, running summits, ghostwriting books. Really, what I do is I help people capture their unique message to their audience and convey it in a way that is fresh and unique and engaging. And that's what I've been doing for over 30 years, writing copy and direct response marketing.
Fantastic. And I know, I think I can figure out why so much creativity goes into it because you also learned acting. You have been in some films, HBO and miniseries. So tell us a little bit about that background of you, because of course that's my wheelhouse. So I want to know.
Yes. Well, acting really is my probably my primary passion. In fact, I got into marketing as I was promoting myself as an actor. That's how I started with marketing. And I used marketing to get into films. I wrote sales letters to casting agents and to directors and to theater owners. And that actually did so much more for me than my agent ever did for me. But I started acting when I was in college. It's kind of funny. I found myself in this acting workshop. I'll tell you a quick little story. I was going to a community college and was working full time, putting myself through school, and I saw this flyer for an acting workshop, and I thought, oh, let's go check it out. And I walked in, and there was like 300 women and maybe 6 guys, and I thought to myself, I'm in my early 20s. I like these odds. So I'm sitting up in the bleachers or whatever we were in. I forget what it was, and the director asked for volunteers to come down and read, and so I raised my hand, and I didn't think I was going to get picked, but she called me down, and then she had me read for a woman, which was really funny. I mean, this is like 1990, I think. Um, Not that there's anything wrong with gender, casting, but it just I really played it up, right? So this thing is when this workshop is over, I'm leaving, I'm walking, off around the corner of the building. I hear this voice behind me, excuse me, sir, excuse me, sir. And it was this director. And I turn around, I was like, yes. And she was, listen, I'm casting for Crimes of the Heart next week. I'd like you to come audition. And I was like, okay, sure. And this was at a community college that was not yet a college where the play was being. It was going to be the first production ever before this. It was like a community college center became an actual college. Now, I was at an official college, community college for this workshop, which is not important, but it was kind of a historical thing to be part of this first play at this college. And so it was during that play that I realized, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to be an actor. I just shoved that way down because dad said that was not a good idea and that I should go pursue something else, right?
Yeah.
And so I was, at the time I was in college pursuing psychology. And so when I moved over to university, I changed my major to theater and my minor to psychology. And after the first semester there, I made this decision that I was going to be a force to be reckoned with. Actually, my second year on campus, I was invited into the BFA program, which is typically an auditioned curriculum or track. I'm sorry. And I had tremendous success at ASU as an actor. And I wound up getting a professional theater contract as a result of that after graduating with Louisville, in Louisville, Kentucky, with Stage One, the largest children's theater in America. There, I had an opportunity to do 3 world premiere plays, one of which was Tuck Everlasting, and I got to play Jesse Tuck, which eventually went to Broadway and bombed, and I think it probably wouldn't have if they'd let me play Tuck on Broadway, but
Yeah. You
yeah.
know, what I love so much, Tony, is it's like, oh my God, when you started telling your stories, like, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. And I know we talked about that, but there's so many things that I learned now from you. It's like the same thing. My dad said, find a job with a good salary, which I did, and I was unhappy. And then I said, I can't do it. I want to become an actress. And I had no idea how to audition. So I picked out the biggest paragraph, which was a male character, and I saw this is still not enough, and, oh, there's another paragraph, which was a female character. So I started out on I had a hat. I said, "I was the director and the inspector," and then, "Oh, yeah, so nice that you were coming." I was playing the whole thing out. It was hilarious, and I did it out of not knowing anything. But here's the thing, when you have that passion and you are excited and that talent is there, people will see it. And I was hired. So not hired. I mean, I started my school, right? I was accepted. So it's so funny that you shared that story. So and then so you are out of you're out of college. You started your first gig at the theater, and then how did it develop from there?
Well, while I was working in Louisville, Kentucky, my younger brother was starting he was marketing his business, and he started actually having success with marketing to other people who were in his industry, and he asked me to help, like, to get on the list of competitors and see what they were doing because he had people that were starting to copy him. Long story short, when I got through with my I also taught at a performing arts school in Kentucky when I was out there. When all of that ended and it was time to come back to Arizona, I was headed to Los Angeles. I had a nest egg and I was ready to go, make my attempt in LA versus New York. And I got sidetracked along the way because my wife at the time found out that her kids from her previous marriage were living with her ex's first wife in Arizona, but he was in Florida with wife number 3 with her kids. So we got into a custody battle. Now, I figured I was naive. I figured that this will take a few months, right? Well, during that time, my father said, "You got to go help your brother down at the office because it's a mess down there." And so I did. I went to go help my brother in his marketing business. And wow, like something clicked for me. I'm listening to tapes while I'm in there, listening to guys like Dan Kennedy and Gary Halbert and Ted Nicholas and, lots of these great speakers, and Jim Rohn. I'm just listening to stuff while I'm working in the office organizing things. And I went to this Dan Kennedy conference with my brother a few months in. And as I was sitting there, it was like somebody pulled a sheet off my head. And I realized, wow, if you understand how to market, if you understand how to sell, you can write your own ticket in life. Now, I still was intent on acting, but this custody battle went on for 3 years and took not only my nest egg, but a whole lot more money,
Mm,
and we won. So what I did in the meantime, I actually auditioned for some community theater, but it's really difficult to do that once you worked as an equity actor, right?
mhm. Yep.
And so I started doing drama at one of the churches where I was going. It just so happened that they were huge and they had a big drama department, and I got involved in that. So I continued to act for many years, although no longer professionally. I mean, I did a few commercials and the HBO movie and the CBS miniseries and those kinds of things. Those were little roles. But, I continued to use my training as an actor when it came to marketing and writing. Because as an actor, you understand, we do a character analysis. And I was trained in method acting, right? Stanislavski.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
really, that's the style that I adopted. And so that lends itself very well to writing and targeting your audience and understanding who you're talking to.
Mhm.
So I've said this before, I've never like officially adopted it and trademarked it for myself, but I call myself a method marketer. And it's because I use those techniques that I learned in acting to communicate and to connect.
Yeah, yeah, and that is a great point that you made here, because at the end, it doesn't matter in which area we are working in, it's all about sales. I mean, we are selling every day, even to our spouses or children, right? Take out the trash, right? And the point that you made was so beautiful, and I also want people to understand talent is not everything. And that's how I actually started writing my first book, because I was a talent agent as well. And I worked with aspiring performers, actors who wanted to get in front of agents and casting directors. And Then I saw some made it in the industry and others not. What is the difference? They're equally talented. And the difference is how you also proceed on the marketing side. What is your attitude, your goal setting, I mean, your mindset? It's so many things. How you talk to people, marketing, right? How you are quote unquote selling yourself. And so so glad that you mentioned that. So now you are working with professionals to help them in their marketing pursuit, copywriting and whatnot. What would you say is the most important part? And if you could give our listeners some tips, if they wanted to uh, get ahead of the game in marketing, what should their first step be?
The first and fundamental thing that everyone has to know is, who is your audience? Who are you talking to? It is so crucial to understand what they worry about, what keeps them up at night, what are their pains, what are their problems, what are their unprofessed, fears, desires, concerns. When you get into understanding and doing research about your audience, who you're selling your product or service to, there are some things that are obvious, but there are some things that are not obvious. And those things usually have to do with, what we call like the seven sins. They're about vanity and jealousy and, insecurity and wealth. So you really have to know your audience. That's primary. And then the second thing is, you have to talk in a way that is conversational and really connects with people. Too often I'll see, like, for example, doctors that I've worked with, if they're communicating with patients, let's say that it's somebody who does maybe a cosmetic procedures, and if they're talking in terms that are too technical or industry related, that people's eyes gloss over. Another great example of this is when I worked with attorneys, trying to take legalese and turn that into language that doesn't make you know, your eyes roll or, gloss
Mhm.
over in the back of your head when you're trying to read it. That is, quite a challenge. So learn to speak in a way that connects with your audience. And there's a weird dynamic that I've noticed with people. When we sit down to have a conversation, you and I will talk in a certain way, but then we might go away, put, you know, fingers to the keyboard and start to write something, or even if we're doing it the old fashioned way, using a pen and paper, and it comes out, stiff and professional and cold, almost like, we learned in school, or at least how I learned in school, to write professionally, and that doesn't connect. One of the first lessons that I received as a copywriter was painful, because I wrote this letter that I thought was great, and my mentor gave it back to me all marked up in red ink, like a school teacher would,
School,
right?
right?
Yeah. With words that a teacher would never say, like, what the F is this? And who do you think you're talking to? And like, this is boring. And I was like, wow, I thought I did a great job. But it was, that stayed with me for over 30 years. Is It's important to write like I speak, and speak to your audience the way that your audience is used to being spoken to.
Yeah.
So those are two things: know your audience, and then be able to speak conversationally with them in a language that connects with them. That's not, you know, way above their heads, or what they're used to, or way below it.
Yeah, that is a great tip. And which leads me to the next question, because also know you are working with AI, and that's how we met, because I was on your program a few weeks ago. And what is your take on how AI took over the writing, the copywriting, and how do you work with it now so that still that human element is part of it? So what's your take on it?
Well, there is no doubt in my mind that copywriting and writing in many ways has been commoditized by AI. And the thing that AI can't turn into a commodity is the creativity and the human emotional connection of something. So The first summit that I did a year ago, before you and I had the pleasure of meeting, was a summit which was about how to grow your business without losing your authentic human connection. And I brought in speakers that were experts, you put that in quotes because who's really an expert in AI nowadays, but who were proficient in using AI to grow their business, as well as people who were experts in human connection, emotional intelligence, communication, coaching, things like that. And the way that I use AI today is primarily it saves so much time when it comes to research, right? It saves a tremendous amount of time when it comes to outlining things. Also, like I've trained my different AI tools to write like me. I've got decades of content that I've created, and I can train my AI to write in my voice. So then what I get back from it can save me a significant amount of time because I can go in and touch it up and rewrite it. But most of it comes out in a way that sounds very much like me. So, what I caution people against doing with AI right now, and this may change in the future, is if you just throw in a prompt and ask it to spit something out for you, but you don't go through it and really meticulously read it and see whether or not it is using language that connects with your audience, communicates, emotionally, then you won't get the kind of results that you're hoping for. I've
Yeah.
also found that different AI tools produce different types of results. So I use a combination of different ones. I'm going to go between Claude and ChatGPT. For presentations, I like to use Manus. GenSpark is very good and it has a tremendous amount of versatility for getting different types of things done.
What is
I also
GenSpark? Can
use
you most people know ChatGPT and Claude, but then we go into other areas. So tell us about GenSpark.
well, GenSpark is who made GenSpark? I'm gonna have to go look it up because I'm like blanking.
So while you're looking it up, I also wanted to say the big difference between ChatGPT and Claude, because I use both, is even though ChatGPT now has the ability to read a whole document, and of course you can train ChatGPT, it knows a lot about you throughout all the history and also what you feed it. But still, even then, even if you give it all of your writing, it still starts to hallucinate in between. Versus Claude, and I did this experiment. I gave a manuscript to both. And what came back, because I asked certain questions, what I wanted that AI to do. It's a different like day and night. Yeah, you can use it, but they say, oh, well, that's not good. Then you still have to work. But Claude is so much more precise and knows your writing style even better, writes like you. But as you said, you have to feed it. I fed my manuscript how I wrote it, right? And then they can come back. So, and that's a big difference. Sometimes people just do a prompt and then, it's not really theirs.
Right. GenSpark was created by like I think Chinese tech guys, one who used to work for Microsoft, I believe. I don't know very much about its origins, but I agree with you with Claude. And interestingly enough, when at the time of this interview, we're currently in like ChatGPT 5.0, I believe.
Hmm.
And prior to that release, I was getting much better results with ChatGPT. Now I'm finding hallucinations and it forgets things, and I'll have GPTs that I programmed that previously worked fantastically that no longer work well. So I have to bounce between a few different tools to try and get the results that I want, especially when it comes to editing large documents. Now, there
Hmm.
are other higher pay to play tools out there. For example, manuscript. If you're writing, books, that is you know, a very effective tool depending on the kind of book that you're writing. I go back and forth primarily between Claude and ChatGPT, and Claude has I like the style of writing that Claude gives me off
Hmm.
the riff versus what ChatGPT does in many instances. I prefer the way that Claude writes. In fact, sometimes I'll take something I've written like directly from me, not with any AI use, and
Hmm.
I'll throw it into Claude and I'll ask it, improve this.
Hmm.
consider everything you know about me and what I've written and, find ways to improve this. And bar none, it's come back with something every single time that I've like, that's actually good. Didn't
Yeah.
think of that. So,
Yeah, and that's how we want to use AI. It's not to replace us or just come up with things. And I know people have done it. They just put some ideas into ChatGPT. Hey, write me an ebook, right? And before you know it, it's like it's so fast. They have that book and then they put it out there on Amazon. And some it's okay if they just wanna say, "Hey, this is my book," and, but they have to also disclose that this was written with AI help. So that's one of the things you have to do. But if you want to be an author that is authentic and has how should I say that? Polite. To be taken seriously, right? So that, okay, this is legit, authentic, this really comes from that author. Not to say we are using AI to improve. Oftentimes, what I put in there, hey, is there something that I missed? If you ask these kind of questions and it comes back, say, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, let me then I go in and rewrite it and write it a little bit better because there was something that I missed." So those are the things how we can use it. But yeah, it's definitely a new era. And how do you prepare not being replaced by AI as a copywriter?
well, I'm actually pivoting away from writing copy. I'm moving more towards doing consulting and actually moving into something completely different because I have no idea what direction AI is going. I do believe that copywriters will be necessary no matter what happens with AI to some extent, even if it's simply managing teams who are using AI to create content or reviewing what the AI is doing or reviewing what the teams are doing. However, for me, I am looking at, okay, so how can I bring the most value to the marketplace with the knowledge that I have? I've got over 3 decades of direct response marketing and sales and experience. So how can I help that? Well, or help people with that? AI, as you know, can help you develop a business plan, help you come up with marketing campaigns, all of those things. But what AI doesn't do very well, at least not yet, is talk about the human element of what it takes to actually manage these things. So I know what it's like to run a business and raise children. I know what it's like to go through devastating loss and still have to show up and try and, you know, run a business. A lot of the things where my expertise lies is in being a small business owner, an entrepreneur, whereas AI can provide insights and guidance for how to navigate these things. There's no replacement for having a one-to-one conversation with somebody and that person then knows this, you've gone through what I've gone through, right?
Hmm.
So let me put it a different way. Mentorship and coaching. Like, you don't want to take parenting advice from someone who doesn't have children. Doesn't matter how many damn books they've read, right? Because they don't have real world experience. You don't want to take like counseling from somebody about overcoming an addiction if that person hasn't actually defeated that behavior themselves, right? So for me, as I continue moving forward, and preparing for AI, I'm looking at ways that I can use my real life experience, my intellectual property, as you might call it, in different ways other than writing. And I'm
Yeah.
also moving towards using my life experience. I think that's for me at least a factor of getting, of aging is I have wisdom that I want to pass on. And that is infinitely more important to me. The things that will create impact in people's lives, that's more important than writing a great sales letter and helping people sell things. Sure,
Hmm.
that's important. We all need money to live, but I have so much experience when it comes to recovery and overcoming trauma and leadership and mindset transformation, all of these things that ruin lives, ruin relationships, devastate people, that my mission is to bring hope to folks through my experience. So that's how I'm personally pivoting. Now,
Yeah.
I'll give
It's
you some ideas about what some other people are doing. Some other copywriters that I know are moving into different areas where they can use their writing skills, editing, content review, email management, where they may take content that people are using AI to create, but then figure out how to manage that, leverage it, analyze it, improve it. So those are some areas where I'm seeing people shift.
Yeah. So you mentioned that human aspect, the experiences with life in and of itself. And you mentioned those moments that you overcame, those hardships and situations. And that is part of this podcast too. We share those moments that helped us get through and come out on the other side stronger. What was one of those moments for you?
When I started my business, it was under extreme duress, so to speak. So I had been working with my brother. We built a very successful company. My wife at the time, my ex-wife, she had some really serious health issues, right? I don't make any secret of the fact that I was a drug addict and got into recovery. I've long since healed from that. I don't even identify as a drug addict anymore because I'm not. But she struggled with addiction, but she also had medical problems, chronic migraines. And back in the late 90s, prescribing very heavy narcotics was quite common. And long story short, my wife had a lot of struggles that then created problems for me at work because she would come to the office. She would be, not in her right mind because of the medications that she had taken. And she'd also be driving when she shouldn't. And so after my second son was born, my two natural sons, I also have two stepsons, she wound up going to prison for 2 years. Now, this is shortly after I left the company because she was causing so many problems. My brother said, like, either you got to leave your wife or leave the company. And, I was like not about to leave my wife when she was struggling through these things. So I started my business with a 3-month-old and an 18-month-old and no one to help me take care of them. And my 3-month-old was colicky. So um, I got almost no sleep for many, many weeks. And that's how I started my business. Now, Sabina, to be honest, most days I thought I was going to die.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. There was a point where money had run out. I had been doing work for people writing copy here and there who were clients when I was running Prana marketing with my brother, but that wasn't enough to sustain me. And thank God I was contacted by a man who had a marketing site and he was offering, to do writing for people. And he was looking for copywriters to help. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, this is what I do. You got to pay me 20% of every client that I send you." I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's great." He connected me with my very first client outside of the industry that I'd been working in, who I am still friends with to this day, 25 years later now, and have done so much work for. And that kind of saved me. And then there was a wonderful lady at the church that I went to who volunteered to help watch my boys. So I would drive 20 minutes a day in the morning to drop them off and then come back in the evening to pick them up. And I was able to actually start to focus. The
What helped you in that process? I mean, that I can only imagine, was like overwhelming with young children and everything else to care about. Was this something that kind of guided you through that process that you were able to hold on to? What was that?
I wish that I could say that there was this, some great, wise, sage sounding thing. But the fact of the matter is that I was responsible for my children. I had a family to take care of. And I knew that I had to get through this. What sustained me was a few things. Number one, my faith. I had a belief in God and I believed that, I was going to get through this. Number two, the people around me, right? I had support from a small group of people who I could confide in and complain to and ask for advice and just have shoulders to lean on. And then I think the third thing was in the years prior, right? When I started studying acting and when I started studying marketing, I listened to all of these great minds, right? I mentioned Jim Rohn earlier, and forget the guy's name. It's blanking to me now, but he had a famous book where like they cut off the top of his head because he was bald and they didn't want to show it. I'm sure you know the guy's name, but I listened to so much mindset material that in the darkest times when things seemed the most bleak and hopeless, something from what I learned from all of those men that I listened to and women and the books that I read would come through my mind. And I just, you know, just get through one more day, just get through 5 minutes, just get through the next hour. Don't give up, keep going. Now, it's not like there weren't times when I felt like I couldn't make it. I said earlier that I felt like I was going to die every day, literally. I mean, at some point, every single day, I was like, I don't know how long I can take this, especially when I wasn't sleeping. I'm getting a couple hours of sleep a night for days and days at a time is, I mean, that's what they do for SEAL training, right?
Yeah.
They try to, you know, destroy you, but that's the life that I was living. And so how I'll sum this up in the way that I'll put it into a nugget that is useful to your audience is your mindset, and you've said this earlier, is crucial. It really is crucial. The things that we think, the things that we say to ourselves, the things that we speak out loud have power. And, if I walked around all day long going, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to make it, I can't get through this, then I wouldn't have gotten through it.
Right, right, right. But you also said something else, and that is super, super important. You said faith, and that is when we are at the darkest times, oftentimes that is holding everything together. The right support system and growth. Oh, look at those balloons that come.
Where did those come from?
I love it. It's a s some it's some Apple thing here. Sometimes you do some movements and all these things are coming up. But so and I think that's great because, hey, faith, support system, growth, which is your mindset. When we grow, when we work on our mindset, we can go through everything. So if our listeners can just take something away from our conversation today, besides all the golden nuggets that they got from your professional opinion and sides, those three, you can go through anything and become your next greater self. So, if someone wants to get a hold of you, Tony, what's the best way to do so if they want to learn more of what you do?
The easiest way to get a hold of me, you can find everything about me if you just go to tonystark.vip. It's TONYSTARK.VIP. And there's links to all of my sites and all of my social media. You can find me right there.
Perfect. And I'll sure put it in our description and in the show notes. Well, Tony, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and also being vulnerable and sharing those dark times and what helped you got through there. So I wish you all the best with your new ventures that are ahead of you. And once again, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you do. I appreciate you.